fill this out to provide feedback. For our current launch scholars, this will be how we collect attendance and award credit. So please stay on for the full duration of the workshop. And if you have not renamed yourself to your full name, please do that now so that way we know who's joining. So now I want to introduce our guest presenters from the Wake Forest University's Counseling Center, Tiffany Longjohn and Adam Winham. So Tiffany has been in the mental health field for over 10 years, serving in diverse settings. She is originally from Orlando, Florida, and relocated to North Carolina in 2011 to pursue a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from UNC Greensboro. Since completing her degree in 2013, she has provided therapy for children, teens, and adults in various levels of care, including outpatient and in-home services. Currently, she serves as the Assistant Director for Community Engagement at Wake Forest University's Counseling Center, where she oversees the center's outreach efforts, case management, and partnerships within the Wake Forest community and surrounding areas. And Adam has been in the mental health field since 2023. He is originally from Charlotte and went to Wake Forest University to achieve a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. He has worked at the Wake Forest University Charlotte Counseling Center as both an intern and a staff counselor since 2022. So I am so excited now to pass the floor over to Tiffany and Adam to get our workshop started.
Hi, everyone. Give me a moment to share my screen. Can everyone see that?
There we go. Yes, we see it.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure I'm sharing so you all can see that. All right.
So thank y'all for being here. We really appreciate y'all taking this time. I know the College Launch Program is really helpful for students. Students I worked with at Reagan High School were a part of it a couple years ago and really enjoyed it and spoke really highly of it. So I hope y'all can use it to its full capabilities. Our presentation is just about managing anxiety, rejection, and stress with confidence as you navigate senior year. We recognize this is a year of huge transition for y'all. And so we're really excited for all of you. And we also just want y'all to enjoy the year as much as you can. But we recognize there are some stressors. So get roll.
All right. So we want to start the presentation kind of hearing from you all. And so as I say this question, I want you all to kind of reflect on how you're feeling as you're preparing for your senior years. Some of you all kind of shared that already in the beginning check-in and kind of icebreaker. But take a moment to think about that a little bit more. I also want you to think about how you are looking forward to, so what you are looking forward to, things that you have anxiety about, and then what you feel indifferent about even. And then after you've spent some time reflecting, share your thoughts using the chat feature. So drop anything that you want to share in the chat, and me and Adam will take a moment to kind of read what you all are saying before we move forward. So how are you feeling as you prepare for your senior year of high school?
There's some nerves about the Common App.
Yeah. Nervous for sure. Excited and nervous. Yeah, holding space for both of those feelings for sure. All right, so we'll start by talking about senior year, right? And so thank you all again for sharing your thoughts with us, and let's continue this conversation. So we know that senior year can represent a lot of transition for you. Not only are you transitioning or anticipating transition related to preparing for college, but within even your identity as a high school student, right? And so you're going from being a junior to a senior. That's different pressures there. For some folks, this is the last year where you'll be kind of with the same people in the same places all together at the same time. For some folks, it's going to be preparing to leave an area that you've called home for a very long time to potentially go to school, right? And so there's a lot of transition that happens during this year. There's a lot of milestone events. And so I can think about my own experience and think about like excitement around prom and like senior nights with my extracurricular activities. Some of the college application and admissions experience too. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. But then also graduation. And it's also a time where you plan to have a lot of fun. So you should plan to have a lot of fun, right? So this is a portion of your senior year, but we also want you to enjoy it. We encourage you to enjoy it and spend time with your friends and family, doing things that you like to do because you made it. You're a senior in high school, and that's a big accomplishment. But also in this year, you're also tasked with balancing your role as a senior and planning out your future, right? And so that alone can be a lot to think about. And we'll talk about what that looks like as we continue throughout the presentation and what can come up for you as you're planning this and you're going through senior year as well.
Yeah, so in addition to the factors that Tiffany just discussed, we recognize that college applications, whether it's the Common App or a university's own individual application, can cause some application anxiety. We hope that you're excited about coming to college. We always get excited when the new class of students come in because it's a lot of new people to meet and to join this community. And we also recognize excitement can sometimes trend into the stress area. And so we want to, as Tiffany said, be respectful of both of those feelings and let y'all feel the excitement and also just address some of the stress you might be feeling. So, excuse me. So I'm not going to read all the stats to you below. I know that y'all are more than capable people of doing that, but just more to validate some of the stress that you might be feeling. So the National Association for College Admission Counseling completed a fairly large survey of over 1,000 students to talk to them about not just application stress, but stress around college in general. But as you can see, 3/4 of students felt that college applications were a very decisive moment in their lives. And to an extent, it can be. But something we hope that you remember is that you are not defined as a person by your acceptances, wait lists, deferrals, or rejections. It has become so built up in our culture that you are where you go to undergrad, and that's simply not true. I know it's easy for me to say because I'm on the other side of it, but I promise you that there's so much more to life than just where you go to college. And so we want to recognize how important it is, but also try to add some perspective for y'all that this is a hugely important process and y'all are so much more than just your college acceptances. We also want to recognize that a lot of y'all come from different backgrounds. No two of you probably have the exact same story, and college application stress can look very different depending on where you come from socially, economically, culturally, spiritually, and so on and so forth. And so these statistics, again, are meant really to validate you and your stress and that you are not alone. And there are a number of students out there feeling exactly the same way that you do. And we hope that you all will build and find communities that you feel well supported in.
All right, so we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but now we're going to the chunk of our presentation where we spend more time talking about application anxiety. So I wanted to start this section kind of defining application anxiety for you all. I'm sure it's not unfamiliar, but I want to kind of give words to it, right? So application anxiety it refers to the feelings of stress, fear, or worry that people experience when submitting an application for something. And that could be anything like a job, school, a program, just submitting an application. It can stem from various factors, including pressures to want to succeed, fear of rejection, or uncertainty about how well one's qualifications or abilities are represented in application materials, which again, I'll talk a little bit more about that too, about fitting your person into one application and trying to figure out how to show yourself best. This kind of anxiety can also manifest as procrastination, second guessing yourself, overthinking the content, or just generally feeling overwhelmed, right? It can also be tied to, again, the fear of failure or a lack of general confidence in yourself, your own skills, and your own achievements. We all know that you all are scholars and are well involved, but it doesn't mean that you don't feel some type of anxiety after submitting an application for college. And so we want to acknowledge that as well. common themes that come up with application anxiety. So I kind of mentioned it a little earlier too, but like, am I qualified enough? Have I done enough? So we're looking at like standardized testing scores, which I know a lot of colleges now are like test optional, but still thinking about like that, those schools that are not test optional, right? Looking at your GPA, looking at your volunteerism. I know when I was in college, it was all about like, how much am I spending my volunteer hours? Where am I volunteering? Am I a part of Beta Club? Am I a part of this club where I'm doing different things and kind of diversifying myself as a student? And then thinking about, again, other extracurricular activities. So what am I involved in as a student? How does that translate on my application? How do I continue that once I get to school, to college or whatever? So that comes up too, right? And then the essays, my God, the essays, right? And so sometimes that can be overwhelming itself. Just thinking about the number of essays to complete, the different topics that you would have to do, and things like that as well. So that all kind of produces some anxiety. We're thinking about what's the appropriate number of applications. And I put appropriate because there's no defined number of applications you should apply to. I guess, again, when I went to school, I applied to, I think, 4 schools because I was like, these are the 4 that I want to do. And if I don't figure it out what amongst these 4, I have another backup, right? But it can be overwhelming because sometimes 4 is too low for some people, or they feel that way. And sometimes they want to apply to like 20 schools, which is a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort, right? But it's you determining kind of like what's appropriate. How many is too many? How few is too few? And then other part of application anxiety that also trickles into after accepting a college is picking the right school for you, right? So thinking about what qualities you want in a school, what you want to involve yourself in once you get to college, what area you want to be in, how close do you want to be to family, what type of college or institution you want to go to. Do you want something more rural? Do you want something more urban? Just thinking about all those aspects when you're thinking about applying, can be a little overwhelming. So when we talk about application anxiety, I mentioned this earlier too, difficulty fitting your entire identity into an application. So you may want to think about like how you show all aspects of yourself in the admission essays or other application materials. And we want to, but that also can just be stressful, right? Figuring out like, what do I share? What don't I share? How do I present myself so that this person who's reading my application can see me, right? Can see me as a student and see me as a person outside of just my academic, achievements, but can also see me as a student that will be at the institution, right? There's concern about making yourself vulnerable to potentially being rejected. So both Adam and I have both hit on like rejection a little bit in what we talked about thus far, but like it's really vulnerable to put yourself in that position where you're submitting application materials and waiting on someone to read it and make a decision, right? And so that can produce a lot of anxiety there. And then general concerns about the application process. So the application, the paperwork that you complete is just one part of it. Sometimes there's interviews to do, there's tours that you have to engage in. And then once you get all the schools or the responses back from the schools that you're interested in, is making that final decision, right? And so that's all tied to application anxiety and even anxiety as you go into the transition into college.
Yeah, so this next section is one that's not fun to talk about, but rejection is a possibility when applications are sent out. So my hope for all of y'all that this information becomes unnecessary, because I'm sure you're all going to get in everywhere that you're applying, and that's the hope and the goal. But just in case, it's always helpful to have a good strategy for handling rejection, because like we said earlier, it doesn't define you, but it can feel very personal. So again, we just want to say if you are rejected from a school, whether it's your dream school or a school that you just kind of threw an application out there for, it can hurt. And so it's okay that it hurts. You know, that is a natural feeling, and we don't want y'all to just say, I need to grin and bear it and move on. It's not personal, but it can definitely feel that way. But having that time to reflect, whether it's with a trusted parent, a friend, a teacher, a counselor, whatever it is, can be really important to get some of those feelings out and start moving forward. We also want y'all to think about the fact that, yes, you know, maybe you were rejected from this school, but you have so many achievements and accomplishments, whether it's being accepted to other universities or if it's just all the hard work that you've done to get to this point in your life. Celebrate those and try to remember that this is not the narrative of who you are as a person. And so we hope that like through building good support systems, through friends, parents, etc., that y'all will have a good place to fall back upon if you experience rejection. We're gonna kind of try to wrap it up by talking about stress management, because that's something that I'm sure you all experience already and have already found coping skills for, but we hope to add a couple to your repertoire.
All right, so we would like to hear from you all again. So to start this conversation about stress and stress management, we have another moment of reflection and sharing for you all. And so this time we're asking you to reflect on your current strategies to manage stress and how you engage in self-care. All right, so take a couple moments to think about how you currently handle stress and what you do to take care of yourself, and then feel free to share those in the chat feature. Lost my chat box. Can someone help me out?
Playing sports, going out with friends. I go on a walk with my dog when I'm stressed.
Mhm.
Talking to someone about it, listening to music and reading, praying. Have an hour or two to myself and with no distractions.
Yeah, those are all great ways to do. I mean, I myself engage in some of those for stress management as well. I also walk with my dog, and I need time for myself. And so those are all great methods that you all use to kind of manage stress. We're going to talk about a little bit more and why we think stress management is going to be really important, especially now. And then we'll go into strategies specifically around like how to manage stress related to applications. And so, like I mentioned earlier too, again, you're managing the dual role of being a high school student while also making the first step of planning your future. And so plainly said, that can just be a lot, right? Managing the workload of classes and other responsibilities doesn't stop even with applications. And so we are going to talk about like different ways that you all can manage stress, because we want you to keep that in the forefront as you're going through this process. Generally, transitions can be hard, right? And so even before you actually make that transition, you can experience some difficulty with transition or the transition to college. And so in our roles in the counseling center, we often speak to students about transition. So we sometimes are speaking to students as they're coming into Wake Forest as first year students, but then sometimes we're talking to students as they're leaving Wake Forest as seniors as well. And so there can be some discomfort in just stepping away from what you've known or have only known and embarking on a new journey going into college. And so we emphasize that transitions can be a really difficult time at times, but there's also a lot of joy in transitioning and learning new things about yourself, learning a new environment, establishing new responsibilities or new connections, sorry. It's also important to remember that your physical and mental health are equally important. And so we encourage, we wouldn't be counselors if we didn't say, protect your mental health at all times and take care of yourself at all times, right? And so just make sure as you're working through this time of applications and deciding on college that you're also taking care of your mental health as you would your physical health.
Yeah, building off of what Tiffany was just saying, being active is a great way to release stress and pin up energy. Several of y'all pointed to that in your responses, which is awesome. Leaning on support systems, prayer, talking to a friend, talking to a family member, those are all wonderful ways to connect with support systems and to feel like you are not dealing with this in isolation. Be sure to take care of your needs. All-nighters sound like a good strategy until they're actually happening, typically. And so as somebody who pulled a couple all-nighters, I never want to do it again because you're dead the next day. Get enough sleep, get enough rest, make sure you're properly fueling. Don't be skipping sleep, meals to get stuff done if you can help it. And so Part of the way we do that is organized to the best of our ability, so we're not getting things done at the last minute. But also, you all have great resources in the launch program and Lauren and Mackenzie. If you need help, ask for it, because, you know, people want you to succeed. And so please don't feel like you have to take this on like a one-person army. To manage application stress, these 5 points were something that a lot of students surveyed agreed on. And so we wanted to make sure to kind of wrap it up with this because we feel like this is one of the more important takeaways. Make preliminary deadlines for yourselves. A lot of colleges have a lot of different deadlines. I know January 15th used to be a big deadline day, but then colleges will have other days for scholarships and their own applications and things like that. So make some preliminary deadlines for yourself that give you enough wiggle room. So that way, if you miss your preliminary deadline, you're not panicked because it's not like the January 15th deadline type of thing. That can help with organization, but also with your stress management. Work and talk with peers. Y'all have, I don't know how many people are in this, like close to 15 people in the launch program. You have peers going through the same process as you in this and at your school. So lean on them because they may have some techniques and advice that help you, and you may have some for them. Find and create breaks. This is always one that gets pushback from students that Tiffany and I work with that say they don't have time for it. There is time for it. We just have to make you a priority here. Your application, your achievements are not the priority. Your health and well-being are. Don't think too far ahead. You can only control what you put on the application and when you turn it in. And until you get your acceptances and all of your kind of decisions, you don't have any control in that process, and that's okay. But so let's release the stress from that and not think too far ahead about what if I get accepted here or rejected here. Control what you can and then move forward. And find a support system at the schools you're interested in. So this is once you've got the acceptances, a lot of students sometimes have struggles with transition to college because they have no idea what they're walking into. But doing some research ahead of time, looking up if there's a university counseling center. If you come to Wake, there definitely is, and most schools have them. All the main North Carolina schools have them. But they can be excellent resources, or they can direct you to excellent resources on campus. Researching clubs and other things you might be interested in too can also help you have some friendly faces to find when you get there.
And I'll add that that part about finding your support system or even just getting information about that support system can happen even before you make your decision on what school you're going to, right? It can be part of your decision-making process. And so it's not uncommon for students who are touring Wake Forest or still kind of like in that phase of making a decision to stop by our office and say, like, can I just talk to someone about what resources you all have available? And we'll spend time talking to them because we want folks to make a really informed decision, right? So a lot of students and parents take advantage of those tour days to come into our office, to see what it looks like, to see what we have to say, to meet clinicians, or just ask general questions, even if they don't pertain to the UCC. And so you can do that after you make your acceptance, but you can also do that before, and that can be a part of your decision-making with where you go. Again, going back to the point we mentioned earlier around like choosing the right institution for you, choosing that right environment for you.
So in conclusion, we've talked about it a lot. You know, senior year can be stressful. Take time to enjoy the moment. Let's focus on what you can control, put your best effort into applications, and reach out for help if necessary. These things don't define you. And we want you to take care of yourselves because we want you to get to college refreshed and excited and not burnt out from this process.
And that is all we have. Thank you all.
Nice. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box. And we just got some questions in our pre-survey. So we'll just start with those. So first, we just talked about university counseling centers. So what services and resources do university counseling centers generally offer that students can take advantage of?
I'll start, Adam. Feel free to add whatever I've missed. But we typically offer in like one-on-one sessions with the clinician in our office. We offer group therapy for folks who are interested in group therapy. We offer workshops for folks who want more of like a classroom kind of setup. We offer like some outreach services. So individual therapy looks like a one-on-one meeting with someone where you talk about the things that you want to talk about, right? So like you'll work with that clinician to determine goals for therapy and things like that. We also offer help for folks who are like, I don't know if I want to meet with the counseling center. I think I want to find someone off campus. So we can offer support in doing that as well. We have a really strong relationship with a lot of providers in the community and can help you get connected to those people if necessary. So counseling centers can do like a wide variety of things from prevention to intervention, which would be more of the one-on-one meetings or the group therapy. Did I miss anything, Adam?
I think, yeah, no, I think that was great. I think too, just look at the specific schools because Wake is a smaller school. And so some schools that have bigger student bodies like a UNC or an NC State, like it may be different in how they approach student engagement. You'll still have the one-on-one sessions, but they may refer off campus more often or have more programming or something like that.
Okay, another question is, how can they learn to say no to commitments when they are feeling overscheduled?
So no is a complete sentence for me. And I know that could be difficult at times, but one of the things that I'll even say, I'll share it with you all because I have it on my desk. I have this little post-it that says, "Does it bring you joy?" And so I always ask myself before I accept a commitment of like, does it bring you joy? Like, is it something that I feel like I can involve myself in? Am I going to feel more drained before, like by accepting this commitment, or am I going to feel more encouraged, or is it going to bring me joy, right? And so I always ask myself that question, even now when I accepting commitments. But no is a complete sentence, and so I kind of lean with that. Like, you don't owe anyone any explanation. You can say no, and that can be just it, you know?
When being faced with rejection, how do you not compare yourself to others?
It's a really good question. And it's a hard one to give a specific answer to. I think some of it is the college application process has become so much of a numbers game, and it is not always a one-to-one comparison. And so I think when looking at it though, you are a complete person, an individual beyond even what you can fit on that page. And so whether or not that school feels that they're going to accept you, you are worthy of that value. And so comparing yourself to others, as Tiffany's sticky note says, does not tend to bring joy. It tends to rob us of joy. And so being proud of who you are, whether or not this school agrees with you, is going to be part of that.
Okay. What are some quick and easy relaxation techniques that they can use in the moment when they are feeling stressed out and overwhelmed?
So I'll start with one that's a go-to for me often. It's the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding exercise. I can share a document that you all can share out later. I can put a link in when I get done talking. But it literally just asks you it prompts you to consider 5 things that you can see in the room, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and then 1 thing that you can taste. But I often switch that with something that you can say that's positive. And so that looks like a mantra, a positive quote, a song lyric, whatever resonates with you, right? I often talk to people that I meet with about that because it's one of those things that you can do without anyone else knowing. You don't have to say it out loud. You can just kind of work through it in your mind. And the goal is for it to kind of pull you away from thinking about the things that are causing you to feel anxious, right? And so it's a go-to for me. It's probably the main one I go to next to deep breathing.
Okay. Are there any apps that you would recommend that they can download now that could help with stress management or time management?
My first thought was Calm, the Calm app. Calm has a lot of different things on there, from meditations to sleep stories. If you need some help getting to sleep, it has a little bit of everything on there. But honestly, I use a lot of YouTube. So YouTube is YouTube University. It's a wealth of knowledge and wealth of information. So you can search just about anything you're looking for and find it. There's plenty of meditations on there. There's step-by-step videos about how to do a meditation. There's videos that does guided meditations for you. So like that would be a place that I would go to without downloading an additional app. But there's other things that folks like to use as well. I just can't think of them other than Calm right now. Adam, do you know of any?
No, Calm is a great one too because it's free, but there are like some apps like DBT apps and things like that have more specific skills that can be helpful too for like distress tolerance and things like that. So that can probably also be some information we send you.
Awesome. Yes. We'd love any tips or any apps that you have. And the question that we'll end on is tips from a counseling perspective. What are some tips for a successful high school senior year and college freshman year?
I would say giving yourself grace. It's a huge transition to go from high school to college. Even if you're if you're from Winston and come to Wake or go to Winston-Salem State or anywhere in this area, it's a huge transition. And so giving yourself grace and time to adjust. So many students come in and want to be perfect the first day onward, and they want to have 100+ friends and be as connected as they were in high school. And they kind of forget that it took 4+ years to build a lot of those relationships and a lot of those activities in that time. And so giving yourself time to get acclimated, giving yourself time to connect with people on campus, and not being frustrated with yourself if it's going more slowly than you'd like.
Yeah, I'd echo everything Adam has said. Again, the grace, and I know sometimes like for some of the students that we talk about, sometimes it feels really isolating. It feels like they're the only one going through that, and that's usually not the case. And so we strongly encourage, like, when you get here, find different ways to connect. And it doesn't have to look like having a large friend group, but maybe it looks like you going into an identity center, or maybe it looks like you developing a relationship with another staff member, or finding a space that you feel comfortable on campus, right? But definitely give yourself some grace, because things look to be one way, but things can be different, especially when it comes to that connection on campus. And just know that you are exactly where you're supposed to be.
Okay, well, thank you so much for answering those questions. I am going to drop the post-survey link in the chat. So if everyone, before you log off, if you could click on that, it's very brief, should only take 1 or 2 minutes to fill out. But otherwise, I really want to thank our guest presenters, Tiffany and Adam, on talking to us a little bit about just some mental wellness things that high schoolers go through. We appreciate you joining us, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their night. So once you have that pre-survey completed, feel free to log off. And if you have any remaining questions, feel free to stay on. We'll stay on for the next few minutes.